Welcome everyone to Tunnel Vision. I'm your host Ryan Abraham, publisher of USCFootball.com, and I got Keely, Eure right next to me, and then a little further away we got Shotgun Spratling. How you guys doing?
Hello, hello.
Yeah, I am a little further away. Keely's in Hollywood. I'm in the valley. It's raining up here. Oh,
it is raining.
I got the rain.
Yeah. So if you can't tell, this is a different from our normal Tunnel Vision setup. Thanks for joining us. Social distancing. We're all in our respective homes. We did one like this a week ago where I was in the studio and Shotgun and Keely were both at their homes. It was raining. I really didn't feel like going in the office, so I'm going to do this one for my home too. So we'll figure this one out. Hopefully it's all right. We're not going to take live calls for this show, unfortunately, but we will answer your questions on Periscope and Facebook and YouTube. So we talked to one of these on Thursday when we got the order from. We had to stay in our homes, and so it's been that way for a few days. So
apparently, it's the opposite of last week. Chuck and I sound good. You don't, Ryan.
Really?
Apparently, according to our viewers.
Ryan broke everything once again.
You know, it's hard producing.
Hopefully.
That's all I'm going to say.
It is hard to produce. I don't know what.
Maybe it's the karma. All these years of making fun of me for producing, and look
we're doing it remotely. It does sound like it's spiky a little bit, but I don't know. I'll play with that. Why don't we, Shotgun and Keely, then you talk then if I'm not sounding good.
Okay. Should I take over hosting duties? I missed
you
this,
host
actually.
right. Yeah, you host.
Sure,
I'm going
okay.
to look at the microphone thing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision. I'm your pseudo-host, Keely Eure, joined by Shotgun Spratling and Ryan Abraham. We got a fun show for you guys today. Another day of quarantine. We thrive off of sports and no sleep, and now we've had sleep and no sports. It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, I don't really like it. I don't like sleeping this much. You know, I'm getting 8 hours a day, and it's just not fun. My body's just like turning off. It's like I have no energy anymore because I'm sleeping more than I normally do. So
Okay.
I feel like my body works the opposite of most people's. So unfortunately for me, I do not do well with extra time and extra sleep, unfortunately. So it's definitely a unique situation. You know, we're still processing and trying to figure things out. And, you know, I think that you're seeing some of the networks are processing and figuring things out. So you saw some classic NCAA games on today on CBS, and you've seen some different things. I think ESPN's the Ocho right now. ESPN2 is. So doing some different things to keep people getting some sports in their life, even if there's not any live sports taking place.
Yeah. So have you watched any of like the marble racing or anything? Any of the weird things that have popped up since sports are essentially gone?
Honestly, I have not. I watched a bunch of reruns of like.
I watched some cornhole. Or let us know what the actual issues are, like what it sounds like or something. I'll try to fix it, but hopefully it's better. We'll see.
Hopefully.
But like cornhole, it's crazy how they just. I mean, one guy hit like, 12 or 16 or something like in a row, just all in the hole. You're just like, that's crazy how they could do that stuff. They just throw it so accurately all the time.
Wow.
If you ever played it,
Unfortunately, my apartment's not large enough to just put some cornhole boards up. You know, I need to get a dartboard or something in here. I need to find some sports for myself.
Yeah,
I might be hitting up Amazon to get some sporting events around the household.
I just got a big 4x6 like gym mat, in my house, because usually I'm going to the gym to work out. Now you kind of have to work out, at home, and I had a hardwood floor carpet upstairs, and just sweating on carpet doesn't sound good. So I got the mat and I used it today and did a workout, and it was good. So trying that, but then you want to get other things like, I need like a stepper. Or I need, it'd be great to have like a bike or like one of those like steps that you can like, jump up on and stuff.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? I don't know. Risers.
No, I was just making fun of you, but yes.
Yeah.
Plyometric bucks. That's what they're called.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
So, yeah, one of those. The office, we have the mat and the net, so you can like hit golf balls in there a little bit, but that's something.
Nice. Well.
Yeah.
Shall we transition to, I guess, USC talk?
Yeah, we'll talk some USC stuff. Are they saying I sound okay or whatever?
I think you sound better. Okay. So let's roll with it.
Yeah, we'll roll with it and stuff. But thank you guys for joining us. I know this is it's a little strange just because this is a weird time for us. Normally, we would be covering USC spring football. What we should be talking about today is, guys, spring break is over. Those first 3 practices, man, everything just looked different. All the new coaches, the new faces around, it just seemed like a better attitude. Now they had that week off to kind of, refresh and regenerate, and they're going to come back out, and we're going to start seeing full pads and practices and stuff this week. And that's what we should be talking about right now. And obviously, we're not with the coronavirus. Everything is delayed. So it's a kind of a bummer knowing that one, that we're supposed to be talking about that, and 2, this should have been the greatest weekend ever with the first round of the NCAA tournament, first and second rounds, which are awesome.
Are they making the most of the tackling periods rather than, hey, it's a 3-minute tackling period and that's all we see, and hey, we tackled today? No, we want to see if they actually go full bore, if they're hitting people, if there's hitting in some of the other segments that they can be hitting in, but you don't have to hit in when you have full padded practices. Those are the things we're going to be looking for this week. Unfortunately, we're all sitting home and watching reruns.
Yep.
Or cornhole.
I mean,
yeah.
It also feels like the longest week ever. The fact that you said that we'd just be coming off of a USC spring break, I was like, no, we would have been like 3 weeks into spring camp. Like, it's just incredible to me that there would only have been, we've only missed 2 practices so far, which is crazy. But I'm just still trying to grasp what this means for the long term. I mean, do you guys think that the NCAA would try and put a mini spring camp sometime in July, or a joint spring fall camp situation? Like, how, if this somehow gets situated in July, or I'm putting that as a marker, would the NCAA kind of make this a better situation for coaches and players in that sense? Or should we not count on the NCAA, as Dan always says?
Yeah, well, one thing real quick, the passage of time that you mentioned is absolutely insane right now. Like, Shotgun and I did that show on Thursday with Breaking when the states started to say the stay-at-home stuff. And that seems like 2 weeks ago, that was only, and,
right.
Even the previous week, like what was going on when, really everyone started to figure out more about social distancing and all that. Like, all of this has just been, it just seems like things that happened 2 weeks ago were, a year ago. It's insane how different it is. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I think Dan's right, you can't really count on the NCAA, but the good thing is that it's not going to be kind of a Mark Emmert or NCAA decision, because you got to see what the NBA does, and you got to see what NHL and Major League Baseball and all that stuff. And it's different. And Shotgun and I talked about this. You could have an NBA season without fans. It's small enough. You could have just essential people there and potentially make it work, even if there's like a lot of social distancing going on. You can't do that with football because you're going to have 100 and something people just on the team itself. So I think for football, things have to be really stable out there in the world. So when you get to that point, the other sports leagues will probably have been ahead of college football, and then you'll see what the timing is. Is there going to be, is it like an addition to fall camp if it goes that late, or is it July or something, and then you get right into it? It's hard to say, but I think they're going to be flexible and try to make it as easy as possible for all the teams. You don't want these teams to go out there. They don't have a preseason, so you want to get as much practice in as possible, but you have to do it in a safe way, obviously.
Yeah.
I think the biggest domino, the first big domino is going to be to potentially getting back, whether or not that happens, will be the Olympics. The 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. I know a lot of coaches are looking to see what happens with the Olympics as to whether some summertime things, evaluation periods for basketball or summer leagues for baseball, or, what the football can do if there's going to be a football season is, well, let's see what happens in the Olympics, and then probably the NBA will follow behind that, NHL, and we'll see an MLB. We'll see where things go from there. But I think it starts with, they're trying to wait and see as much as they can to see what happens, see if the Olympics can be played. But once that decision is made, one way or the other, I think that will lend itself. That'll be the first domino towards a bunch of other things.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Oh,
go ahead. Sorry, Keely.
Sorry, what I'm curious of is, could you see a scenario where the season somehow starts in October and you forfeit all of September as a D1 decision or NCAA decision? where you forfeit September, practice in September, and just start the season in October. I mean, I know that obviously has conference title implications because, USC always plays Stanford in the first 3 weeks of September. Could you see some weird, wacky change to how we know the football season to be, just because you want to get the season going at some point?
I was going to write a story on this because Shotgun and I talked about it a little bit on Thursday, and I'll need to kind of relook into it. But from what just initial reaction, I think it would be really hard to delay the season or split everything off into let everyone play their conference games, figure out your conference schedule, and just go out and do that, and then the conference winners would all play some kind of tournament. So that would be like the college football playoff, where you would actually expand the playoff for this year. Because if you take away the non-conference games, I think the schedule would be just too messed up. Everyone has different bye weeks and stuff. It just seems like that would be very complicated if you want to just remove the first 2 weeks or the first 3 weeks, or like Keely said, the first month of the season. It almost would be all right, schedules are off. Conferences, you go figure it out. You guys all play each other. Tell us a champion, and at the end, we'll let the champions play in a tournament. And maybe there's a group of 5 champion, or maybe there's a couple, and they put them in. I don't know, but something like that I think would be interesting. But I think, from what I looked at it, you try to delay the season. I just think the schedules are they've been set for years. It's going to be really hard to do.
Yeah, and if there is a delay to the season, I think you're going to see them try to be creative as much as possible. It might be going back to, I think it was the 84 MLB season. They had a strike. They decided to make, champions of the first half and champions of the second half. Those were going to be the opponents in the playoffs for, each league, and then they went to the World Series from there. So they split things up to try to change things with the strike being in the middle of the season. So I think that there's going to be some different things, maybe some creativity if you have to go to a situation where the season starts late.
Yeah, you'd obviously need that, but I'm just curious because I feel like you could go a lot of different ways, and of course we don't know when this will end and when we'll be back to quote unquote normal life. I'm just really curious how this gets solved.
Yeah, we don't know at this point. It's everyone's curious. It's so. Our jobs here, we're just going to try to, we'll still try to be entertaining. We'll still try to bring you a lot of different content on the team. We plan on doing some they're kind of technically off-season interviews now. Players or coaches we would normally have been interviewing spring football. We got a special one coming up tomorrow. We'll let you know who that is. So that should be interesting. So it'll be good. Watch USCfootball.com tomorrow for, we'll probably have it up sometime that day. So I think that's what we're going to try to do, because I know, like Shotgun said, you might be watching reruns or Netflix or the Ocho or whatever, but people still care about USC football, even though there's not spring football going on. We want to try to bring you as much content around that as possible, some different perspective, maybe some historical stuff. We got a lot of ideas people were posting on the message board. Ryan, here's something you could do. Here's something you could do, and we have a lot more free time now, but I find myself procrastinating way more also. So I don't know, it's weird, especially when the weather's nice, you want to go take a walk or something, but if it's raining like it is now, it's crazy. But one of the pieces of content that we produced, and really the only sports news that we can kind of cling on to right now, which everything is so just barren, there's just nothing out there. I did watch some of the classic NCAA tournament games, like watching I figure it was a 1982 North Carolina and Georgetown with Michael Jordan and James Worthy and Patrick Ewing and stuff. That was pretty cool. They had the 92 Duke game where they Christian Leitner's shot at the end. Classic game before you were born, even, Keely.
Because you put it on your story y'all remember this, and I wanted to reply no, I don't.
No, you don't remember that one. And Jim Valvano's, I think that was '83 when North Carolina State beat a completely stacked Houston squad. They had Akeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler on it, and in this NC State, I think they were a 7 seed or something. They win, and Valvano's going crazy, and that was kind of neat to watch those games that you haven't seen for a while, but you miss the actual content. But the point was the NFL has produced some content with free agency stuff. So Tom Brady switching teams, Los Angeles losing 2-star running backs over the weekend, crazy stuff. But Keely, there's a lot of USC players that were involved in free agency, so maybe you want to give an update on those guys.
Yeah, so I did for the site a little tracking former USC Trojans, the Trojans who are in the NFL, and what kind of happened with them, the free agents and whatnot during this time period. So I'll just run through it. So Devon Kennard, he was actually released from the Lions, team captain. He played 15. He started in 15 of 16 games in 2019. So at first it was kind of a shock in that sense, but it ended up working out for him. The Cardinals offered him a 3-year deal, and he actually is expected to make more with the Cardinals versus if he had stayed with the Lions. So actually a good move for him there. Drill Casey, he wasn't a free agent, but he found himself a part of the offseason transactions. He was traded to the Broncos from the Titans for just a 7th-round pick, which is interesting because Casey has actually been a very reliable and durable player for the Titans. So a switch there. Everson Griffin, he is a free agent because he opted out of his contract and signed at a lower rate. So he is exploring his free agency options right now. There's some reports that say that the Vikings and him are still talking and he might just end up back with the Vikings. But there's been some talk that Pete Carroll, old USC friend, is courting him. So I don't think there's been any movement there. I haven't checked today yet, but maybe something's happened. So he is on the market. And then the Rams, not only did they release Todd Gurley, but they released Clay Matthews just 1 year into his 2-year deal. And so he is still on the market, I believe. And then defensive end Leonard Williams. I can hear myself.
Sorry, yeah.
No, you're fine.
I was trying to watch the Periscope feed to get questions on it, but then the volume came up, so my bad.
Got you. I was like, am I imagining this? No,
yeah.
Leonard Williams got a franchise tag with the Giants. He was traded halfway through the season, last season, from the Jets to the Giants. It was actually the first successful trade between the two franchises, which I found interesting when I was doing my research. So he will have the franchise tag gives him a longer window to negotiate a long-term contract. So if they don't get to a deal by July 15th, Williams will play under a 1-year deal, and then he'll go from there. But he still can be a free agent and talk to other teams at this point. And if he is signing with another team, the Giants will receive 2 first-round draft picks as compensation. Roby Coleman as possible this offseason. So he was actually part of, I think he was the 4th DB to be released essentially from the Rams team. So that was interesting. Still hasn't been picked up by anyone yet, I don't believe. Zach Banner, he signed a 1-year deal with the Steelers, of course, in Zach Banner style. He released a parody video of The Wolf of Wall Street with his face on top of Leonardo DiCaprio saying, "I'm back." So he, as we know, if you're a USC fan, he always endears himself to the fan base. He has a personality that matches his size. So he is back with the Steelers. He's actually kind of proving his worth a little bit more. He played for the first time in 2019, whereas before he didn't see as much playing time. And then Nelson Aguilar, he went to, I believe, the Las Vegas Raiders, which is weird to say, but he's at the Raiders now. He was kind of struggling in Philadelphia. 2017 was kind of his peak there, that Super Bowl year, and then he's kind of struggled with injuries and drops since then. I was doing my research, and it kind of looked like the Colts were going to be a good landing spot for him because his best year was when Frank Reich, the now head coach of the Colts, was the offensive coordinator, and then his wide receivers coach, Mike Groh, I believe at the time, is now the wide receivers coach at the Colts. So it looked like it was going to be a good fit, but he ended up at the Raiders, and they need a wide receiver, so a good fit there. Antoine Woods, he's an exclusive rights free agent, so I think they're just going to sign him again because he doesn't have really options if they give him a deal. And then Jordan Simmons was released from the Seahawks. Buck Allen hasn't had a re-up with the Giants, so I believe he is a free agent right now. And then Malcolm Smith doesn't really have a home right now. He did sign with the is unrestricted free agent right now. That was a mouthful. I hope that made sense. There you go.
And you even if we playing on my phone, you didn't get distracted. So good job there.
I tried to go through it. Yeah.
I just wanted to watch. I want to watch the Periscope so I could see questions. Since I'm hosting the show, I normally have the Periscope up on a screen, and now I'm going to have it on my phone. So if you have any questions, put them in the Periscope, and I'll try to read them off of the phone. And I think, Shotgun, you probably have YouTube up, and Keely, do you have Facebook up? Is that?
I don't have Facebook up, but I will.
Or someone does, or someone has it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so put your questions in there. We're not going to... Yeah, we're not going to put them up on the screen or anything, but we'll answer any kind of questions you have. What's the chat room's been looking like? What are people saying?
A lot of comments on the stream quality. I think we're a little choppy as far as broadcasting.
So what we were trying to do here. Behind the scenes stuff. When we broadcast to 3 different channels, well, Shotgun and I just did it to YouTube. It worked pretty well. Took a bigger bite of the apple on this one, trying to broadcast on Periscope, Facebook, and YouTube all at once. So maybe that's it. I can probably, if we do it again, dial back the stream. Like I can do a little less bandwidth going out in the different ones. But I'm sorry if it's a little choppy for you guys.
Yeah, I don't think we're on Facebook right now.
Either.
Did Facebook not work?
I don't think so. I don't think we're on Facebook right now.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
Well, sorry about that, guys.
I think the most interesting thing out of the NFL free agency is Devon Kennard. He was a captain. He gets released by the Lions. Everybody's like, what is going on here? And then he ends up back in Arizona, which is big for him because he's from Arizona. So, getting an opportunity to go back home. And a guy that's been productive the last couple of years, even before that with the Giants, he was pretty productive. So he's been quietly put together a pretty darn good career for himself after leaving USC. So for him to get to go home and get paid, I think that's a big landing spot for him and a great opportunity for him as well.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we're on Facebook. Bummer. Well, if you have any questions on Periscope or YouTube, we will definitely be monitoring that. So what this tells me is this is a nice little emergency thing to do. I can do it from home, but I got to get in the studio and make sure we do it from there. Make sure we get the remote audio set up for that until while we're all quarantined and everything. But the studio is a mile from my house, and I would be the only one in there, so it should still be socially distant enough. So we'll see, So again, apologize for that for the Facebook people that couldn't get it to work.
Yeah. So we actually have a question from our resident Irish fan, Keely, who says, are the USC players getting together on their own and working out, or is that forbidden? They're all home.
Yeah.
I believe right now, correct?
Right.
Yeah, everyone's still home from spring break. Obviously, USC was on spring break this week, so they wouldn't have been coming back until tonight or tomorrow anyways. I don't know if you guys have heard if there's been a directive to tell players to stay home versus coming back to their campus apartments or anything. I know some players are still living around, didn't go home over spring break, so they stayed and have been going in to get treatment and different things and been working out nearby. But a lot of players are back. Dick Lichtenstein's in Florida, and you got guys that are back in the Inland Empire, different things. They're back home, but I don't know if there has been a directive to tell them not to come back yet either.
I think they're working on getting everyone to move out of their dorms and things like that. Where people are still living there, and I think USC as a school, they're trying to get people out as much as possible. So I think it's still like a kind of a work in progress what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean USC as a whole kind of told people, if you're home, stay home, and just don't come back. So I think that would apply to the players as well.
Yeah. But football is always different. Football players are there
They're in their own class.
They're in their own kind of world. They do different things. They have different setups than other students. So maybe it would be different. I talked with some other coaches in other sports, and they were talking about having team meetings. And I was like, oh, you're having a team meeting? That doesn't sound good. Shouldn't be. They're like, and try to do that. I talked to a different coach, technically eligible for whenever sports does come back, and they said, it's hard if you're going to be stuck at home and you're used to this last week you've just been doing nothing, or you just work out or something. Now you actually got to set some appointments, for yourself and go out and make sure you're taking care of your academic work, and that's harder for coaches to help control. They can't stop by a classroom, do class checks and things like that. I don't know if suddenly Clay Helton's face pops into the Zoom or whatever, the rendezvous, whatever kind
He's
of thing.
He's like looking around.
He's looking at all the teachers like, why is the football coach in here? I don't know. He's just checking to see who's checked into the class. I don't know. That might be something that coaches have to do, but it's not. There's no physical class checks or anything. So that's one of the things that some of the coaches are concerned about going forward is helping make sure that their players are staying on top of their academic side as well.
Yeah. Who is the question from?
Coley White.
Yes.
Notre Dame fan.
He sent something to us. He sent us
Really?
some candy and coffee. I didn't get the coffee yet, but I left a note for the postman. Apparently, they left it there somewhere. But thank you for that. That was very cool. Yeah.
And Elsie Eccles, the father of Hunter Eccles, jumped in and said they're working out on their own and want them to go home and stay. He also said earlier in the chat that the coaches are video
with CBS with doing like kind of virtual gatherings with Zoom or other Facebook Messenger or whatever programs, kind of like what we're doing here, but with a bunch of friends. And I think the team is doing that kind of stuff as well. That's how most people are communicating now. You put a whole bunch of your friends up on the screen and kind of all chat and stuff. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, didn't you do a virtual happy hour, Ryan?
I did. A couple of them. We did a couple of virtual happy hours. So everyone, gets a drink and you pull up the thing. And that's kind of what you have to do now. You want to still be. I'm a social person. Like I'm an extroverted person. I'm not an introverted person maybe our Chris Trevino. Like these guys are thriving in this kind of a situation. This is killing me, not being able to be around people. So.
I will say though, it's nice to talk to people other than like my roommates and my family. Like having some type of social interaction is nice. I think I'm an introvert too. I mean, an extrovert too.
You just want to, you want to talk to people. It's an adjustment for everybody, and we know the reason you want to do it. And it's we're trying to save people's lives, and just not being out there is going to help save people's lives. So we'll do our part. Whatever we can.
Not going to play basketball at Venice Beach, or gather on the beach in Manhattan to play drinking games, or whatever is going on out there.
There's some
it
weird
doesn't
stuff.
need to be going on. You can just FaceTime and play Jeopardy. Like Pedro Moore and I did. We played Jeopardy against each other.
Wow.
By syncing up the broadcast when it was on earlier this week. So, you can do some creative things. I think a lot of people are figuring that out. It's interesting, football coaches aren't known as the most technologically savvy, or just sports coaches in general. And now, obviously, with recruiting and stuff, you got to be a little bit more savvy there. But the support staff behind the scenes, give those guys credit, because they're the ones that are help putting all this type stuff together as well. Just figuring out what platforms they can use, and because you can imagine if you have one of those coaches that's pretty red hot all the time, and the videos cutting in and out, you can't see the player. Oh man, you could imagine that's a good skit potentially for some comedian out there of what was happening during the quarantine.
That's an interesting point, Shotgun, that USC adding the new support staff people. I don't think everyone's been hired yet, but helping out there might have been helpful for this crisis too, because then Clay Helton's not trying to figure out how to use Zoom or whatever. Like they got people, there's more people there supporting them to do it. But coaches are home too. I've messaged with a couple, and it's like they're doing they're like taking care of family things and doing stuff that they're trying to take care of their football stuff. They're trying to like recruit, but you're also, doing things with your family and everything. There's, it's got to be an adjustment for everyone. These guys, a lot of the players, the coaches, they're creatures of habit. They have these routines that you just do. You're always following the schedule. Now, everybody's routine is upside down, and you have to be more nimble and on the, you're doing things on the fly and still trying to be good at your job. As you're limited in what you can do, but you got to figure out the best ways to do it, in a safe way.
Yeah. So we actually got a couple questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's cool with me, yeah.
First off is Jasper Smith. He says, with classes going online for the foreseeable future, will this impact players' eligibility, considering the online format is something that can potentially be harder for students?
Well, I know, and Keely, you probably know more about this because you're closer to it, but there's going to be like a pass-fail kind of option for like everybody. Yeah.
So you can choose whether you want to continue with the grade you have, or you can go pass-fail with your class. The problem, though, is that if you go pass-fail, that doesn't impact your GPA at all. So if you're a player who's on the borderline of you need your GPA to be higher to be eligible, you have to take that class for a grade rather than having maybe an easier advantage of a pass-fail or electing to do so. So that's the interesting, tricky thing. So you do get an out by having the pass-fail since it's extreme circumstances, but you also don't get the benefit of having that teacher and having the possible letter grade option. So if you do it, it's a harder thing for you to do. But some players, depending on where they are, eligibility wise, might have no choice in that matter. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would have been taking the point grade regardless. I'm too competitive not to.
Competitive with yourself?
Well, with anybody, I'm like, I got to push my GPA up. These people around me are taking these pass-fail and not helping. I'm working to take advantage.
But that's another thing where players are going to have to be flexible. It's already very difficult to be a student athlete, on full scholarship. You're piling up a lot of classes. Much better in a classroom, but others don't. I mean, there's some players that probably struggle in a classroom that are loving it doing the stuff online, and it might help some students that were not doing as well before, and it might hurt some students that were doing well and did better in that classroom environment, or they're better with the one-on-one tutor that's sitting there and helping them in the John McKay Center as opposed to someone, Skyping or Zooming with them or whatever and trying to help them that way. So I think that, a lot of the students could be putting some, the student athletes putting...
Scene, I believe, on YouTube, who says, the first year in a new defensive system is always a challenge anyway. Will the loss of spring practice put the defense even farther behind without the physical presence of the coaches?
I definitely think so. I think that the spring was going to be big for USC to be and be able to work with it physically on the field for the players and be able to move guys around and say, no, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. But also just, getting those extra reps, it just helps you to know what you're doing that much more and for the coaches to be able to evaluate. Because now you're going into, if everything plays out and you just skip spring camp and you go straight to fall camp, now you're taking fall camp position, who's best, do we need to move guys around? All those things that you would experiment with a little bit during during spring camp, you're now going to have to try to do in the first couple weeks of fall camp, and then express rush the regular fall camp at the end. It's gonna hamper any team that has new coordinators, I think, missing out on spring camp.
There's teams that have new coaches too, new head coaches, and this was their first opportunity to do anything. You look at Colorado, and a guy like Carl Durrell has been out of college football for 12 years or something like that, and you're trying to implement a new scheme and everything, and you don't even get spring football for it. So I think USC is a bit of a disadvantage because they have 6 new coaches, but the teams with new head coaches, Nick Rolovich up at Washington State, wherever there's a new coach, a full new coach, they really want to get out there and do spring football. So they don't even have that rapport with the players yet, and you're building it over internet conferencing, and it's different for everyone. If you're a team that's haven't changed any coaches and everybody, most of the players are coming back, I think that's a big advantage in this kind of environment.
Well, that's what I was arguing, I believe, on the last Sunday Tunnel Vision, is the teams that have everything set in place actually have an advantage. And the thing for USC, the thing that brought hope, quote unquote, for USC fans this offseason was the premise of more physicality. Well, where do you practice physicality? Where do you put that into practice? Practice, no pun intended. So that's something that USC can't change. They can't change the tone of who they are, the character of the way that they play, because they're not on the field right now. So you can talk about it all you want. That's what they did for the last 3 years, I believe, but we didn't really see it. And so now it's, again, the same thing. They're at a disadvantage because they aren't able to put those things into practice and get into that mindset over the course of a couple months instead of, like Shotgun said, a speed rush or drive-through version of what they intended to do starting 2 weeks ago or last week.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll kind of wait and see what transpires. Is it going to be delayed spring practice? Is it going to be no spring practice? Do we just get fall camp? I don't know. I'm hoping we get to see something in the spring. It would be interesting if there was spring practice in July and fall camp starts. You get maybe a week off or something and you go right into fall camp. But those practices are important. I think that, it's important to kind of install things. But you usually would like some time for between spring football and fall camp, because you normally do. If there's an injury in spring football, and spring football's in July, you don't really have a lot of time to recover from it when fall camp starts. So you might, for USC, say it happens in July. You were going to hit really hard in spring football. Do you back off of that? Because you can't afford an injury because you're gonna have to start. Games are like in a month and a half, so it does change a lot of things, and I think those will be decisions that Clay Helton and every other head coach are going to have to make. Once there's going to be some cards dealt, you just don't know what they are yet, and then once you get them, you got to try to make the best hand possible, and there's some risk reward factors of how you go about it, depending on how many practices they give you and when they are.
Mm-hmm. And the thing
go ahead.
Go for it, Second.
I said, Big T brought up, can the coaches virtually coach, send videos to players and teach them scheme, online team meetings, strength conditioning plans online? Yeah, and they're going to try to do all those things. But there's just a difference when you have that coach, breathing on your neck and telling you what to do versus, seeing it over a video chat. It's the same as we were talking about on Thursday about, workouts. When you're in the weight room and you got all your team around you, more adrenaline going, you can lift a little bit more versus
and what I was going to mention too is and this is what Coley White actually asked, but it's interesting to see what this will do for long-term injuries. And he asked, what players, if any, are using this time as an advantage in healing from injury or rehab? And obviously, you have to go with JT Daniels first, right?
I mean, I don't think it's any different. All those guys were going to be healing anyways if they weren't practicing. The only question is, were there guys that were going to be trying to fight through an injury to play in the spring, and guys like JT Daniels weren't. I think it was actually JT Daniels would have been better off having spring camp and him being able to get out there and make some throws if he was able to do what he thought he was going to be able to do by the end of the spring, being able to throw some and maybe even do as much as 7-on-7. To be determined, obviously, was going to be the case there. But I think it would be much better for that to happen for him and to get him to get some reps in this offense versus, not being able to do anything. Now, does it help him for the potential of a quarterback battle that he and Keaton Slovis, neither one of them gets reps, so they're closer together? I think, yeah, it probably helps him there, but as far as healing, not necessarily, I don't think.
Yeah. We got a bunch of comments in there. Thanks for posting all the comments and stuff on YouTube. Sorry, again, we don't have the Facebook stuff going. Anything else, Keely, you want to point out from questions, comments in there?
Yeah, we still have a bit. Donald brings up an interesting and probably accurate point. He says, I love you guys, but I find this very ironic that we're speculating on when this thing is all going to get going again, when we would be chastised about Java potentially getting fired and labeled. So the two separate things, I feel like this is a hypothetical that is allowed and forced, whereas I feel like the other one is kind of forced.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to, you're supposed to have spring football. You're not supposed to fire somebody, I guess. This was a scheduled event that's not happening, and we're trying to anticipate when it will. I know I think there was an article written, there were some people talking about, you want to talk about speculation, they're like, what if the season doesn't happen? Could USC revisit their decision to fire Clay Helton? That was something that came up well. I don't know if they mentioned that one in the comments yet, but it's come up on the message boards and stuff, and that would be interesting, because part of the reason being, Mike Bone came in and didn't really have a lot of time to make a decision. Well, now you got a year. Could you really fire a coach without even coaching any games? But that would be one more year off of his contract that he signed the extension one. So that's an interesting question, but I don't know.
Could you argue that season doesn't count because he never coached any games if you were his agent/lawyer?
Well, I think he would still be getting paid, right? They're still doing stuff. I don't know. That's an interesting question. For all these coaches that have contracts and stuff, what happens? And what happens with eligibility of players? Yeah. Could you, it could really screw up the scholarship counts and all that. But were all the coaches going to get paid and they never, coached any games, or is there clauses in the contract? But does it extend his contract another year? And I don't know. That would be interesting to see. But that's something that's kind of came up more hypothetical stuff. We're hoping that there's a season. We want to see a season happen. But there's people predicting that this is going to end fairly quickly, and there's people predicting that it's going to take 2 years. So I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of question marks and things that are just unknown. You look even at the spring athletics, and these players, we're expecting all the spring athletes to get a year of eligibility back, but that's a big financial burden there. Schools are now on the line for the seniors that would have been gone. You're looking at rosters. Incoming freshmen are not happy right now with this. If they're a spring athlete, because they're like, hey, I would have come in and I had more playing time. Now these guys are going to be back that I expected to be gone. So there's a lot of things that are going to be figured out here. If you look at baseball, MLB is, there was a AP source that said that MLB is looking at the potential of not having a draft. And I was like, why would they do that? But then I was talking to a coach today, and he said, they haven't had a chance to evaluate any of those guys that they drafted last year. Those guys have barely played at the end of last season. So now are they going to cut a bunch of guys without having much of an evaluation just because they got a bunch of new guys coming in? So there's a lot of things that are still unknown. And the biggest thing is no one knows what's going to happen with sports until we figure out what's going to happen with the health of everyone. Once they get, the coronavirus under control, the COVID-19, then maybe we can start moving towards those other things. But until then, there's just going to be a lot of unknowns, a lot of things that are going to be, it's going to be speculation and hypotheticals, unfortunately, until we can finally, get things under control and everyone can get back to a little bit of normalcy.
Yeah. Mark Watkins, I'm sorry I missed your question, but I went back to it. He says, having lost spring, if you were a head coach, would you still have a quarterback competition in fall or prioritize getting Slovis all the first team reps to get him ready to face Bama? So obviously this hypothetical relies on the season starting normally, but missing spring camp. What would you guys do if you were head coach?
You could argue that it was actually would benefit JT Daniels more than hurt him, because if he wasn't going to compete in the spring and Keaton Slovis was, now they're kind of on the same, they got as many snaps in the spring. Neither of them got any snaps. So I think you could argue that would, it could actually help JT Daniels. But I think it's a good point where if you feel pretty confident in what Keaton Slovis was able to do, and knowing that, you didn't get time to refresh anything he was doing in the spring, and maybe you have limited stuff over the summer, you just feel comfortable with the guy that you had last year. So it might be better as far as competition-wise for JT Daniels, but on the coaching side, they might just want to stick with what they got because they know that was working last year.
Yeah.
I got a little bit different take on this, because I think that if you're going into fall camp, you're not just preparing one guy, right? You got to at the beginning of fall camp is always that one difference there. I think if
or whatever.
But if you have to do that, then I think that's the big thing that you're going to be dealing with then. Are you going to try to change what you're doing? But if you have a normal fall camp, then you're going to go through the regular period where it's just everyone gets a bunch of reps. All your freshmen are getting in there and getting a bunch of reps. It's a big teaching moment, big teaching segment. And then the last 2 weeks going into the game, that's when you start preparing normally.
Dave S. has a question. Could you see the teams playing games in September with no spectators?
Like I said earlier, I think that's difficult with college football because it's such a big team. You have over 100 players. If you're having no spectators, you're probably still in that position where you don't want large groups gathering. We talked about you could test the entire team and the whole staff around them, but then you'd have to have them all quarantined and not let them go to their families or see anyone else. So I think because of the way the nature of football is, just the team itself has so many players and so many people around it. I don't know if it would work without spectators. I just think there's just too many people in that one spot. Where basketball, you could probably do something like that. But I don't think it would work for football. This is my opinion, though. I don't know.
And Dave asked a question about no spectators earlier as well. He says, is there enough TV revenue to sustain games with no spectators? And I think that's a big thing. You look at the pro leagues, they make a ton of money on, in-game ticket sales and concessions. And that's the same thing with college football. They get a lot of money from the ticket sales and stuff. But it's going to be, how far do things trickle down for donations? I think that's the biggest area. That's the big. You start looking at it and it becomes $800,000 or $1 million. Those type things, are they going to be set by donations when everyone else has had to cut back in their own lives? A lot of people are taking bets in the stock market and different things like that. I think donations to colleges are going to be to college athletics are going to be a big concern going forward for a little bit of time. And how much impact does that have on colleges and what the college football programs can do going forward?
I think it's an interesting point that TV revenue is that's the main revenue. So if there was a way to produce the games without fans and you could still put them on television, I think they would do them. But I just think if it's not safe enough for fans to be there we'd have to be in a different spot than we are now because it just the gatherings of players would just be really large, and there would be a lot of interaction there. But I think you try to find a way because the television is such a big revenue is such a big part of it.
It would be. I feel like testing would have to be readily available at that point. But what do you do if, hey, that wide receiver on Arizona State tested positive? Okay, do you cancel that game? Like, you have to make sure that everyone on your schedule is also not positive of the coronavirus. So it just seems like there's a ton of variables. And like you said, Ryan, there's so many people that it seems like it doesn't seem workable.
I did see earlier today that South Korea basically has phone booth testing where they're able to take people in and they're able to get results in 7 minutes. So if something similar to that were to come and you can push people in and out, and basically, like Ryan said, you would have to quarantine them, and you get them the day before. So everybody comes in on Friday. You go through the testing process. Everyone's cleared. Then you go forward. I think that is the only way that something like that happens. If the testing is available and it's something that can be turned around as quick as a couple hours, and if it can get down to a couple minutes like they have done it, then it changes things a lot. But again, you would have to probably do the testing the day before, and then
get the whole fairness argument or people not playing their full schedules. I feel like it opens Pandora's box.
It's open. I mean, you have to. I mean, it's like out of the box solutions, like Shotgun's talking about. But if someone tests positive, do we know at the time? Do you know like he's positive, but no one else is? So that player just doesn't get to play. There's going to be a lot of balls in the air for this. So curious to see.
We have another question from Coley who says, Shotgun, Ryan, and Keely, who in your gut feeling is more dangerous to USC, a declining yet always tough Stanford or an upcoming Arizona State?
I'm going to go with Arizona
State.
Yeah, Arizona State right now. I was kind of holding on to the Stanford. They're tough still last year, and I was completely wrong. They just look like they're falling. I have left. I would say the up-and-coming ASU would be, at least right now, the next couple of years, I would be more... If you had to skip a game because you didn't want to lose, I would skip. I would skip Arizona State, not Stanford.
Yeah,
I would definitely take Jaden Daniels over Davis Mills at this point. Davis Mills was previously the number one ranked. I don't remember if it was composites or in 24/7, but out of his recruiting class as a quarterback. But Jaden Daniels has done much more in his freshman year than Davis Mills has done so far in his career. Now, the thing about Stanford is, when you watch them, if they get the quarterback situation figured out, then you start working towards, being back to the Stanford they were. And they had so many injuries on the offensive line, they could still be dangerous. And the other thing about Stanford is that they're a much different offense to have to prepare for. So you have to go in and, you have to change what you've been preparing for versus Arizona State's running similar stuff to a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. But I'd still take Arizona State.
Yeah. I will say, I know that you can't compare it, but USC barely won at Arizona State, and that was without Jaden Daniels. Yeah. So I would go with Stanford at this point. Apparently, pro tip, the stream is working better on Periscope than it is on YouTube, but people are watching on Periscope and commenting on YouTube, so thanks for the dedication.
Oh, wow.
We appreciate it. Yeah. We have a question from Sergio who says, is Keaton Slovis' arm 100% healed? He said on Wednesday of last week, the first and only spring camp practice.
Someone else to tell them that they need to show you the love as well.
Hey, in the quarantine, sounds like for everyone that tuned in and watched live, thanks Neo over there, and they
I think so.
They stopped production on. He's back. They stopped production on it.
They stopped all productions.
Yeah, most of the things are gone. I don't remember Matrix 3. I think it was terrible or something. Like people didn't really like it, but the first, I liked the first one. It was good. The third Matrix,
the trilogy all comes together.
By the way, if anyone watching wants to joke that I've never seen any classic movies, now's the time for me to catch up. So put your movie recommendations in the comments, and I'll try and
Varsity Blues.
Yeah, I haven't seen
Oh,
Varsity
you should
Blues.
definitely watch that one. Yeah.
Yeah, at this point.
I want to get
Yeah.
on Narcos season 2 for the Narcos Mexico.
Oh,
I think I got to start that.
nice.
Heard it
Very
was
nice.
good.
Currently watching Manhunt on Spectrum about Richard Jewell and Eric Rudolph.
Ooh, nice.
I'm
Check that
Pretty
watching
interesting.
Love Island, a trashy dating show, but it's riveting. So
Nice.
I might come out of this with a British accent. Who knows?
Very
You should
nice.
watch the American version as well.
Oh, true. Shouts to your significant other.
Oh, very cool. All right, well, that's Shotgun. Keely, I'm Ryan. Thanks, guys, for tuning in and dealing with our questionable stream, and we will talk to you next time.